So Tara, how are you?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I am fantastic. So I am coming off of about 5 weeks of 712s. And
Wow.
so I had recorded probably 4 or 5 podcasts prior to me going on to a shutdown. And then I, kind of seen your LinkedIn presence which I'm glad to see that, by the way, because what you're doing, like the topics that you're talking about, that's precisely where the conversations need to start. So, so how long? I mean, what's it been? 4 years since we last spoke. Seemed like it's been a while.
It's had to have been 3 to 4 years, I'd say. It was either 22 or 23. In the fall of 22 or 23, it would have been.
Yeah. What was the location? I forget.
New York.
New York. Okay, so yeah, that was probably 23. Yeah. So it's been about 2.5 years. And since that time, you and your husband have started Total Glass, right?
Yes.
All right. So you're very close to like EMR status, or if maybe you started before then. But you guys have done, I would assume, a fairly decent amount of work up until now.
Yes, so we actually had started our company before we met you in New York,
Yep.
but we were babies kind of in it, and that's why we were there to try to get more knowledge and all that good stuff. And so we were fairly new, and fast forward a few years, we've grown every year. So we are probably sitting at, yeah, I think last year we wrapped it up at about like 1.2 million, and this year we'll probably hit 2 million. So for being newbies, I feel like that's all right. That's decent for us.
Oh, for sure, 100%. And it takes about 3 years, give or take, for an EMR rating to be established for you guys. For those of you who don't know and might be listening, and uh, at what point? I'm going to imagine it's pretty early on, but at what point did you realize that this is like a baby that never grows up?
Um, well, so the deal is this. Before I did this, I was a teacher. I was a special ed teacher for 15 years. So I did that, and then I jumped ship after COVID because I was burnt out, like so many teachers in the United States are currently. And my husband had already started this, and he was like, well, I really need some help. And I honestly did it thinking I was just going to buy like 3 months until I found a different teaching job, kind of a deal. And fast forward, and here I am still. And now I own part of the company, and we have really just jumped into it full fledged. And I would say it took me a long time to realize, probably because I fell into the trap of, when this payment comes in, it will get better. When this payment comes in, it will get better. When this payment comes in, it will get better. And I had an aha moment maybe about 2 months ago where I realized that no matter how much money comes in, it's not going to get better because the system is broken. And that's kind of where I got to sitting here today.
Yeah. So if so, I know that those of you who are listening to our podcast episode, there's a little bit of a background story that's kind of warranted. So we kind of fill in the dots and spaces a little bit. Tara and I met and her husband because I was a part of it's a contractor. Basically, it's like a week-long contractor crash course on here's what you don't know. Here's what you don't know, right? We don't know what we don't know is what Carrie was very famous for saying.
Yeah.
And so we were talking about starting your company in whatever let's say specific niche that you're looking at, and finances, marketing, business development, all of that stuff. Total Glass is the name of their company, and they are doing primarily like ornamental glass work, correct?
So we do storefronts, curtain wall, doors, door hardware, all that good stuff. We'll do a tiny bit of residential, like showers and stuff, but that's really not very often. Our bread and butter is storefront, curtain wall, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And so during the time that I had met, I'm typically I'm not really the default for me, and I'm I'm just as guilty of doing this as much as I am of telling other people, is like, don't have more social media than you're willing to leverage, because it's kind of a waste. And that's kind of where I'm at, actually. But for the most part, it's the truth. And so, being friends with Tara on LinkedIn, and then starting to see a significant amount of traction, maybe about 2-3 months ago, where she's having all of these conversations, and what she's talking about, and what I'm very interested in, is what she has dubbed the Subcontractor project. I'm not going to steal any of her thunder at all. I'm going to let her tell her entire story, and then we're going to have these conversations. But just so you know, if you're listening, and because I just like to have conversations, and I'm a naturally curious person, I'm more than willing to be an advocate for, or a platform for other people who've had the same problem, because the answer is always no until you ask, until you begin to have that conversation about what's really going on here. And I've seen some of your posts, read them, and I thought it's very thought-provoking. And people aren't shining a spotlight on what needs to change. And I think that, that lack of awareness needs to change. So, starting off, jumping through, you get to about 2-3 months ago, give or take, you're going, hey, something is broken, if you will. It's never going to get better. And let's talk about that.
Yeah. So it's not going to get better. I'm literally just every month praying for money to come through, hoping it all works out, stressing, up late at night, just the all of it. And I realized that it was just not going to change, because I started to really see it for what it was. I think it takes time, especially if you haven't been in it for a long time, which is what happens to a lot of subcontractors. A lot of the people who start companies like mine, and like so many of the trades, that's not their forte. Their forte is the business that they do. So for us, our business is glass. And so it took us a bit of time to catch up with the business side of it, And so I was starting to see that it really wasn't going to change. And at the same time, it was actually kind of perfect storm of multiple things happening. It was coming up on the winter time, which is always slow for money to come in. And it's always like, around January, it just dries up for a couple of months with payments coming in, things like that for us. We have at the same time happened to have a general contractor who decided to hold payment for the contract that we were working on, like our biggest contract that we're working on, to the tune of about $150,000. So for a small subcontracting company, that was difficult for us at the time. And then on top of it, our banker got word of this happening, and they tightened up our financing and essentially, I won't get into all the details of it, but essentially choked out our cash flow into our company for an amount of time that we're not sure when that will end at this point. So this was all happening at the same time. And then I finally realized I really needed to start negotiating contracts, advice that people had given us many years ago when we started this. And I was sitting in a meeting with an attorney from a pretty large contractor in St. Louis and my attorney, and we're talking, and it became very evident in those moments that he had no idea what the law in our state was, even just for retainage. He had no idea what the actual law was. And I was kind of dumbfounded by that, And then I sat in another meeting with another general contractor a couple weeks later trying to negotiate another contract, and he just blurted out in the middle of the meeting that he wasn't going to finance the project. And I just had to sit there for like 30 seconds for him to think through the whole chain of events of what that means. And then it dawned on him, and he's like, oh, wait, that means we're asking you to do that. Oh, I see why that's a problem. And it just really started to dawn on me that people are not putting it together. People are not, everybody is so in their own world and their own, trying to cover their own risk. The banker is only caring about his risk. The general contractor is only caring about his risk. The subcontractor, I mean, yeah, of course, we're concerned about our risk too, but we're just forced all of it. And you don't realize you're being forced all of it until you're in the thick of it, and it's hard to get yourself out of it. So it's kind of how I got to be here. So I decided in all that I would start the Subcontractor project, and it is a platform that I have started that essentially what my goal is, and it is my mission until I make it happen. But on the starting standard is for me for subcontractors is that there should be a net 30 pay no matter what. So from start to finish, if there's an undisputed pay app, it should be paid in 30 days or less. That's a non-negotiable in my opinion. After that happens, I think it's kind of moving forward towards looking at retainage and things. But I think the net 30 would change things for so many people that are in the industry and in the trades.
So much to talk about.
Yes. Sorry.
No. It's really good because the contracts matter. On the labor side of the house, as somebody who's an advocate for labor, right? So I'm sitting here and I'm always like, it blows my mind that when if everything that I get involved, my rent, my mortgage, my cell phone, utilities, it's all governed by a contract. And so many of us enter into contracts without really thinking about what it actually means to sign your name and be like, all right, I'm committed to this. And then the very thing that we rely on to fulfill these contracts, which is me going to work, means I don't have a contract. I'm at the mercy of at will, which is kind of bananas to me. But, at least I'm covered and many other people, right, under a collective bargain agreement, which is kind of how we're talking. But then you go on the other side, and this is where guys out in the field really don't understand. And it's the contracts that the contractor enters into to procure work. And if people enter into business with starry-eyed dreams and this urethral thought process, only to find out that, oh wait, the contract says that, it might be a net 90, or believe it or not, I've seen net 180. I've seen net 180. Yeah, it's bananas. So I've seen net 180. I have seen net 120. I have seen, and I'm seeing, I don't know if you're seeing this more and more, but a lot of general contractors are trying to push liability onto the various subs, and even saying like your part is done. But I've seen where general contractors are trying to make all of the subs share the liability downstream, meaning like if there's an incident, then all the subcontractors bear the brunt. I'm going, okay, well, that seems exceptionally nefarious to me. So you're playing the system, you're gaming the system. And I think you're right on your post where you're like, subcontractors are financing this work being done. That's precisely what it is. That's what it feels like. It's 100%. So I think your net 30 is a really, really, it's a really good target. What kind of pushback are you hearing?
So it's interesting. When I started speaking a month or two ago, I thought I had a longer road than I actually think I do have sitting here today. I've talked to hundreds of people, a lot of companies. This is actually a big deal, and I did not know how big this actually is. And there is a lot of people who have invested a lot of money into finding programs to help fix this issue. So I do think that we do have platforms that can sustain what I'm asking for. The issue is the buy-in from the GCs and the buy-in from the lenders. Actually, they're finding that the lenders are pushing back a little bit on that, and that's interesting to me. I don't know why. I haven't had a chance yet to talk to a lender to see what their perspective of it is and how they are assessing their risk in that and how they wouldn't be covered, but essentially, I do think there are programs out there that could get us there a lot faster than what I believed just a couple of months ago.
So if you had to, let's say, I'll be curious. I want to circle back to the programs because I'd like to know what that is, what some of those programs are, because the obvious question is how do you get this accomplished, right? You can get there's an old premise, right? No army can withstand an idea whose time has come. So, but from a lender's perspective, if you had to guess without having talked to them, it's interesting that they have pushback. So what do you think? And we could be totally off base here. We could be, we're just scientific. It's a swag, right? Scientific wild guess. But if you had to guess, what do you think? What would be the reasoning behind their hesitancy in, let's say, getting involved in Net 30?
Well, I mean, I kind of, on the most basic level possible, if I can get my stupid younger brother to pay for something for me, why wouldn't I? I don't know if that's what it is, but it's a thing for me that I don't understand why they would push back on that. If it's something that the owner can prove that they can pay, all of us have to prove that we can pay our bills. All of us have to say, prove our finances and show the banks and do all of the things. So if the owners have done that and the banks are saying we are approving them for this amount of money or however that works, well, where is the money and why does it take so long to get to anybody when we're in the middle of this, And I don't think it stops at the lender, but I just don't understand how it's to the point where it's so difficult for it to move down the chain.
What if I'm kind of a pessimist sometimes. I am though. I'm just thinking like, what if a major point of contention is, well, if money is flowing freely, you don't need as much money to borrow from me to lender.
Mm-hmm. Oh, true. Except for I'm finding it really hard to borrow. I'm finding it really hard to. That's the other part of the business. There's so many parts of this business that are a factor of it, but that's the other part is they find subcontractors so risky though. Lenders find subcontractors as risky people and they don't really truly understand your financial statements because they want to look at it as a traditional business. But commercial subcontracting is anything but a traditional business. I can show a loss on my P&L at the end of the year by hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I could have hundreds of thousands, $800,000 in outstanding bills that haven't been paid, and had they been paid on time, I wouldn't have a loss, Yeah. And they don't understand that side of it. They just look at it for that, and I've learned that it's a little bit of a responsibility on me as the subcontractor. I think you really have to do your due diligence in representing your business on paper. But again, that takes a whole lot of knowledge and a whole lot of experience to get to the point to be able to do that as well, too,
Meaning contract negotiations.
Yeah.
Yeah, earlier you said that there was someone in the room, was it your attorney or the GC's attorney, who didn't understand retainage?
Yes.
Which one was it?
The GC's attorney.
Now you can kind of see why in the Fundamentals Academy, where there was a guy who his sole job, people thought he was nuts when he abandoned all kinds of like general liability, or as far as like auto and all this other forms of insurance, and he focused solely on construction, because construction was his own animal, and he built this fantastic company that he eventually obviously ended up getting out of. But there's just so much nuance when it comes to construction, and the fact that there's an attorney sitting across the table from me who cannot grasp. I'm going to guess you're probably seeing 10% more than anything else, but 10% retainage, and it's like, my part is done. Give me my money. Like, why do I gotta wait for someone else to do their job when my part is done? Give me my money now. Mm-hmm. It seems like it feels. I keep coming back to that. It feels like it's systematically designed to make subcontractors carry the burden.
Yes.
That's exactly what it seems like.
Yes. I mean, if I couldn't tell you the amount of days that I have sat at my desk and like, this can't be real. Like, times that I have thought I've had to have been crazy. Like, I really questioned myself. Am I nuts? Am I crazy? How can I not see what's happening here? There's no way. What other industry works this way? And I mean, I've done a lot of I can't believe it's this way before I've just started realizing it really is just that way, and we have to acknowledge it and address it to move past it, you know.
Yeah, well, kudos to you for actually, because I'm sure you've had like you just said hundreds of people that have reached out to you. You've had hundreds of conversations, and so the vast majority of people are unwilling to. We look at low hanging fruit with any problem at all, and we think, well, that's part of the problem. It's like, okay, that's low hanging fruit. We can only solve a problem in as much as we acknowledge it and address it in its full encumbrance. And when you look at the construction industry and the fact that it seems to be systematically designed to be almost punitive in a way,
Yeah.
you're going to carry the burden. Even though, like, just from a safety perspective, like the general contractor has a tremendous amount of responsibility and, quite frankly, a lot of liability. They've figured out a way to push that downstream in a lot of ways. I've worked for companies where they've taken a look at, because I don't really reside in the commercial aspect,
Mm-hmm.
but I've seen where they'll take a look at the contracts and they'll go, what they're looking to do is disperse all of the liability to down to the various subs. And the company I work for went, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to be party to that. I didn't, that's not my issue. I didn't bring that about. You're not going to sit here and, penalize me for something that I had nothing to do with. And that's, that's another thing. So that is bizarre, So, I don't know, you're in Missouri, correct?
So I'm right outside of St. Louis, but on the Illinois side. So I live about 15 minutes from downtown St. Louis, but in Illinois.
Okay. So what is your experience, if any, with pay when paid versus pay if paid? Some states outlaw the latter.
Yeah, so I have not seen any pay if paid. It is very routine. Most of them around here are paid when paid. And the issue with pay when paid is, when do you get paid? Because you're never I have asked the question probably hundreds of times since I've owned this company to GCs. When did you get payment from the owner? And there has never been a clear answer. A date has never been given. I've asked it very clear many times, repeatedly, and there is never an answer of, we got paid on this date, your check will be there at this date. The transparency of that is just, it just doesn't exist. And so that's the biggest thing I see with that one. It's very rare for it to be anything else in our area. We did do a little bit of work for a company. I don't know if I'm giving shout outs, if I can do that or not. I'm not going to say anything negative about any contractors, but we did work with a contractor that was outside of the St. Louis area. I think they're actually based out of Wisconsin, but they do a lot of commercial, chain stores. And they were doing one in the St. Louis area, and they hired us, and they were incredible to work with. Their contract was beautiful. They handled everything so well. They released the retainage in a very timely manner in the way that it should have been done. There was no begging. There was no, and I think we did have to wait like 45 days for payment, but that really was just the chain of it, and if I knew I was going to get paid every time in 45 days, I would take that too. But, but so that's I've only seen that happen one time in probably hundreds of contracts I've had at this point. One time, one contractor, and not in our St. Louis area.
It's a shame that it's like that.
Yeah, it is.
Because you're right. There's no, when did you get paid? And there is no clear cut answer. And I'm sure that I'm sure this is a song as old as time. There are plenty of other contractors that could jump on here, and maybe when you share this out, they'll be wanting to share their story too, because that's how you bring awareness, right? I mean, I'm willing to talk to anybody for the most part. And the more people who share it and share it out, the more it gets out that, hey, this is a systemic problem here. And we need to start calling out bad actors for what they are. I mean, it could go so far as be like, yep, I'm not working for that GC anymore, because that's what happens. Some subs would go, nope, not working for that GC. I mean, in my own area here, I remember hearing stories, and this happened a lot before I even got into full-time employment. So it's been quite some time now. But there would be general contractors who would utilize this very system, which is designed for the subs to carry the burden. And then when they held out and drug their feet because the subcontractors were, they were up to their eyeballs, and then they would offer them settlement terms. Yep. You can't tell me that the system, that it isn't being abused, that it isn't being used to pay. This is obvious. I don't want to broad brush any general contractors. I'm just saying that there are some bad actors out there. If you get paid, then what you should be doing is pay your subs in a very timely, professional manner, and not use loopholes like, oh, well, you got this to me at 4:55 and not at 3:00 on the 10th, and you know what I mean. So now you got a whole another month to wait for your money. So it's like, what are some of the reasons you've heard? What are some of the reasons that you have heard contractors give you for not paying in a timely manner?
It's usually just we haven't been paid yet by the owner. That's what they rely on, because that's what the contract is. It's we haven't been paid yet, so we'll let you know when we are. We'll send payment as soon as we are, and then it'll be 2 months later, and I'm asking the same question, and it's the same thing. And that's the most frustrating part for me. This mission of mine is not to bash general contractors, because I have some general contractors that I work with that I actually really like a lot. Now, I might not like all of your business practices, but I do like you a lot, and I am not trying to just hate on the general contractors. And there are some that I think general contractors kind of get screwed in the whole thing too, So they are trying to protect themselves, but it mostly is just a reliance on the contract, and the contract is just of terms that just aren't feasible for us, And I mean, yes, we signed it. We shouldn't have signed it. But when it's the norm, and when, like, I was negotiating contracts this week. So that's one of the things with my company going through what I am going through. And actually, to go back what you said just a minute ago, that you feel like it's kind of abusive, I 100% agree with that statement, 100%, because of what I have gone through the past few months of dealing with the general contractor of not paying, that we still have to go on the job. I'm still performing on the job. My guys are still out there to this day. I submitted this pay app on October 15th. We have in writing from a superintendent at the school, from all kinds of people, documentation of beautiful work done. There's no issue with the work, but still there's no payment. And that to me is just mind blowing. And then the bank looks at us like, what's wrong with you? Why is this happening to you? And I don't know why this is happening to me. I don't know, but I have done everything I can do, and I'm being very honest with you. But they're like, yeah, no, sorry, funding pulled, with no warning, no. And so when you said abuse, I was like, man, he actually just used a word that's exactly how I feel sitting in the chair that I feel I'm sitting in. And it's honestly probably what fueled me to finally start speaking out loud, because I'm so sick of it feeling like no matter how well I tried to run my company and have our guys show up and do a good job, and I get that there are subcontractors who don't come back or don't do solid work. I understand that. But we can't keep being treated like that's everybody, because that isn't true. There are really good subcontracting businesses out there, and there's no reason that we should treat everyone like they're just going to skip town, and that's just not how it goes. But that's what they lean on is, well, we can't trust you. But then their contract terms are predatory. I was doing contracts all this week, and for instance, one of the general contractors in our proposal, so this is how deep it gets, and this is why I feel so bad for so many, like especially mom and pop shops and stuff like that, because they don't have the ability to fight this kind of stuff, and they don't know what they're getting into. But an example is, so on our proposal, when we give a price to a general contractor for a project, okay, we'll do the job for $50,000, say, and this is what we're going to cover in our scope. We also, in that proposal, put terms in there that says that we will not accept terms that hold retainage on materials, because we do a lot of schoolwork, and we all know that schoolwork can go multi-years, and retainage just being held endlessly that's wild. And so I was trying to negotiate a contract yesterday with a general contractor that we have worked with since we've been in business. We have done so much work with them. I feel like we have a good relationship, but it feels like we don't, honestly, at this point. But I asked him to remove that in the contract. And when I dug deeper in the contract, they put a little line that they buried in like page 49 of a 68-page contract in a clause that it doesn't even fit in, really, that says that the terms that were set forth in the subcontractor's proposal are null and void on the signing of this contract. And you know what I'm saying? And like, why would you put that in there? That's like, that isn't very like, that's not very partnership like, you know?
No.
And to me, and then you guys want to come back at me like, and then this general contractor calls Nate and says, why is she the one negotiating contracts now? Because we want our company to survive. That's why she's negotiating our contracts now, you know. And it's just, it blows my mind that they are trying to put things in there to be kind of predatory, but then they come back at us like we're the ones that are doing wrong. And that's not nice, you know.
I'm going to bury a little statement that basically says whatever you've put in on your end is null and void, meaning I just wasted my entire time trying to negotiate contracts, which is what people will say. I've seen some of the comments. They're like, well, you need to negotiate better contracts. You need to okay, that's very shisty.
It is very shisty.
Gives you the creepy crawlies because I'm holding your feet to the fire. I'm actually taking the time to read the contract for what it is. And this is what you know what I mean? That's bananas, man.
Yeah. And so it's like, you know, you think and that's why it's hard because such contracts are so much language. Most people who own companies like myself, that's not what we're good at. And we don't know. I'm learning. I have to learn now because my company cannot sustain not getting better at that part of it. So I have no choice but to pivot and get better at it and make better choices and plan better. And the truth is, I am at the point where there's about 2 or 3 general contractors that after really digging through the contracts and just how I feel like they respond when I'm asking to negotiate, I just kind of starting to feel like, you know, you got to pick your general contractors. You can't just pick everybody. It's not the way it goes. You know, we got to get better at that too. And I will put that on subcontractors. Subcontractors have to get out of the panic of I just need work. I know we need work, but we can't do it in the name of signing things that are putting us at massive risk.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. But the cool thing is this. So, well, the other point I was getting to, I feel like I get on all my topics and it's hard to stay on one, but the thing, I forgot that part. Well, what I'll say is this, is that I am currently having to pay an attorney for almost all conversations. Like even with the banker and the issue that I'm having, him responding to me has become difficult. So I feel like I have an attorney for everything. Like, and you don't expect that when you're in business. You're just like, oh, I'll do this, and I cannot believe the amount of times I've had to email an attorney over the last couple of weeks. That's nuts. And there's no issue with our work, and somehow I still have to have attorneys, and that's mind blowing, you know? So the money I'm spending for attorneys right now is just unreal. And that's kind of messed up too. Why is this party of people having to use attorneys to recoup money all the time? You know, we're funding a lot of jobs just to get
paid.
We've worked for. Yeah.
Just to get paid for what you're contractually obligated to get paid. Like, give me my money.
Yeah. So there is, though, a really super cool tool that I am going to be using going forward in my company. And I would suggest, and I'm sure there's other ones just based off of the people I've met, the research I've done, what I'm sure I'm going to go through in my company is there is a company called Fair Build AI. Have you heard of them?
Only through your LinkedIn posts.
Yep. So they actually are a company. They're an AI-based company, and their platform was completely built for subcontractors. So not general contractors, no one else in the chain. It was made specifically for subcontractors. And what it's for is you can take a contract with a GC, or you can take a contract with a vendor. Because I was kind of slow to find out that game is that you can kind of negotiate with vendors too. I didn't know that for the longest time. But you can take your contracts and you can upload them into their platform, and it will redline any clause in the contract that is not good for you to sign. It like literally gives you suggestions to like send back. Now it won't negotiate for you or anything like that, and you might still need an attorney, but it's really nice because it actually gives you the ability to look at, it gives the everyday subcontractor the ability to look at the contract and put it in terms that they can understand and where their risk is and understand really what they're signing before they sign it.
That is an excellent tool.
It's a fantastic, and it's very reasonably priced.
Because you have to go through. I mean, you have to read all that stuff. I have look. I do weld tests at the hall, and it literally is only one page. I need you to read like these. I don't know, maybe 10 points total. Just tells you certain things, and then on the back side, it's just a little bit of pre-information. And people are so used to signing their life away without reading anything at all that I'll hand the clipboard to them, come Saturday morning, right? And I'll say, read this, sign it, get it back to me. And there's no way. And I just scribble it and give it to me. So that when somebody comes to me and they did not follow the processes that they were supposed to, and I tell you, you failed your weld test. I'm like, what? And I'm like, let me show you what you signed. I'm like, it's one page. All you literally had to read was this one page that tells you, put your plate together. Let me see it. Put it in place. Let me see it. Let me see your root pass. Let me see. Like you skipped all of this. And the reason you did is because you didn't read the very thing that you signed. And I'm like, so I'm not surprised that there are companies out there that, in the interest of just needing to get paid, that there are bad players out there, and quite frankly, good players who are looking to pass off burden to other contractors, in this case, subcontractors, who utilize this system in such a way that they exploit subcontractors. Let's just call it what it is. They're exploiting subcontractors. And they're just as much a part of the problem in the grand scheme of things. So I'm not surprised. So it's good on them. I'm not sure I'd love to actually have a conversation with them to find out like what is the genesis behind starting an AI company that specifically is offered to subs to highlight, let's say, the negative language because that's a pretty neat tool. I'd be curious to know the genesis behind it.
I'll send an email and introduce you to a couple of people in the company that I've talked to, and I won't tell their story. I'll let them tell their story, but I'm pretty impressed is all I'll say. I think that they had at one time in this life an interest in the game, and I don't know that they still do, but I think that's why they started this, because they saw the injustice in it, and I think that they care about it. And Rusty, this is one thing I'll say too. I've been blown away by the amount of people who feel passionate. I feel very passionate about this. I'm a very passionate person. If I decide I'm going for it, I'm going for it, and I'm going to say all the things, and I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to make the change that I am going for, because I fully believe in it. But there are a lot of people who are very passionate about this topic, who are making moves behind the scene, trying to make this problem get better, right? And we are just at a point where I really truly feel like there are people who are starting to have concerns about our national security, because if we don't have good companies that can get into the game and sustain in the game of commercial construction in the United States of America, who is going to build our buildings? And I never really thought about it on that level, but I think there are a lot of people who are starting to have some big concerns about. I think of it on a smaller level, because I'm just a subcontractor. I'm just trying to get paid on time, and I'm trying to make it more fair for my peers. But there are some people who are up there in this world who just feel like it's going to become a national security issue sooner than later if we don't somehow find a way to get this part of it under control.
So I'll be interested. I want to plant plant a bullet point here, and it was about the various, let's say, I'm assuming it was subs, but people that feel very passionately about this and how they're working behind the scenes. Because I want to ask you what that means, what that really ultimately looks like. If it's like, from a political perspective, or if it's going back to the programs. But I'm genuinely, because it's the last thing you said, it's the first thing I want to touch on, because you were talking about the national security issue. Do you, just on the basis of conversations with those individuals, do you think it's primarily because it just seems like it's just a cog in a machine that's so locked up that nothing actually gets done? Or is it because, or is it possibly intentional to drive down costs or something of that effect?
Yeah, I don't know that part of it. I'm not sure. I'm that part of it. I'm not really sure.
Okay.
It's hard to know. I don't know. I keep thinking I really need to start doing some real deep research of the history of this. Because how did we get here? What point of the United States of America did we get here where the people who are building the country are also the ones who are funding it? I just don't understand that part,
Yeah, it seems bizarre, doesn't it?
It does. And I feel like I need to go to the library and get a bunch of books. That's what I think I need to do.
Interesting. So from the national security perspective, just because I did not think that was where the conversation was going to go. I mean, it's got me, it has me thinking of, like the visa sponsorship that's being exploited significantly in this country. It has me thinking, and the primary reason for that, from an exploitation perspective, is to drive down wages, right? It's very difficult to be an American in this country and to, let's say, perform work when people are exploiting a specific type of visa or multiple types of visas and bringing in like relatively cheap labor. And so it makes me wonder, is this nefarious thing, is the end goal to bring in contractors as well that'll work for pennies on the dollar because they can, spend shit money elsewhere? I don't know. I'm just, that just happens to be the pessimist in me, or the realist, because I'm, it's not even apples. It's an apples to oranges comparison, because you're talking about individuals as opposed to companies. But the point taken, right? That it's the machine is so bogged down. And then when you add on to it, from the fact that the contractors can't get paid, add on to it the diminishing pool of people to do the work in the first place. The not just the diminishing pool of people, like bringing people in, but the diminishing pool of experienced people to do the work.
Yeah.
Because on any given job site, and I don't know, this may not be your forte because you're busy in the contract side of the house right now, but for the vast majority of the people that I talk to, you see 30-year-olds and younger, and 50 to 55-year-olds and older. That's what the job site makeup is. People that are in the 30s and the 40s are with people on the job with 30 that are in their 30s and in their 40s with the applicable experience is so small. So if you take that and then you reduce the number of contractors that are able to get work and to sustain because they can't get the funding, because the system seems to be inherently tilted in an exploitative and an abusive way, it brings a very troubling dynamic in the future. So point taken. I'd be curious to know, I'd be curious to have, this just brings up so many things. I got so many questions bouncing around in my head. But so going back to the programs, the people that are working behind the scenes, what are you hearing, out of your, I'm guessing you probably had hundreds based upon your LinkedIn comments. at this point. People that have reached out and are like, yo, we got a voice. Let's have a conversation here. Someone's shining the spotlight on the rottenness in this industry and the way that this pay is taking place. So what are some of the things that people have told you or made you aware of that they're actively or passively trying to do to at least draw attention to this problem and bring some form of a solution to it?
So there are a lot of them are software programs or programs that should try to help with that. The three biggest ones are, two of them are focused on getting the subcontractor paid faster, creating transparency through the whole chain, making sure that everybody can see where the money is at, what's being held up, that kind of jam. Just brings more transparency to everybody involved, which we absolutely need. The other part of it that we need is we absolutely have to have some kind of legislation that forces it, because we are not going to get, I don't even know how many subcontracting, general contracting banks that are involved in this whole interweb of this industry. There's no way that we're going to be able to force everybody into it unless it becomes legislation, in my opinion. I've thought about a lot of different things, like, well, let's ban the subcontractors together because there's power in numbers. Let's do, I know some of the companies who have some of the software programs, and some of the programs are patented too. So there's been a lot of research and investment into them to really that's live. That program could go, I believe, from my understanding. I actually think they have people who are already using it. It's just the buy-in hasn't been there yet. They're focused on the lenders, trying to force the lenders into it. The other company, who's a little bit different, but along the same lines, they're pushing general contractors, but they're not having any luck with the general contractors. and then I thought, well, let me push the subcontractor thing. I could keep going with this and grow it and get there. But the truth is, I honestly think we need the platform, because we need it to change. We need something, because you can make the legislation change, but it's going to be the same thing as it is right now. The general contractor is holding money from me right now. In my opinion, that is 100% not legal, but he's still doing it, and I still have to go through the whole chain of everything. So just because you change it and you change the legislation does not mean that it's going to fix the problem. And it was very interesting, because I had conversations from quite a few people from the UK, because they, I guess, have modeled their industry very much like ours, so they have the same struggles, and they recently have had some massive changes in their legislation, and that is exactly what they've seen. So it has changed, and they've come up with new rules and laws to help protect the subcontractors, but it's actually made the distrust grow larger, because when they thought the problem was going to get fixed, the general contractors dug in even more and haven't changed anything, and now they're just spending more money going through the court system to get paid. And so whenever they started telling me that, I realized, well, I can't just force the legislation. You got to have the software to go with it. You got to have something, or a platform or a model or something that to drive that legislation towards, or there will be no change, in my opinion.
No, it makes perfect sense. I have said this for quite some time now. If you have something on the books, a law, a rule, a regulation, whatever it happens to be, if it's not penalized, right? And in the prime example that I'm going to use is our child labor laws. Our child labor laws are very weak, and to be honest with you. And if you have a law on the books, and in this case, because we're talking about general contractors, but in my case, what I'm talking about is child labor. If the law is not stiff enough and doesn't hurt me in the pocketbook, you're not disincentivizing me. You're incentivizing me for breaking the law, because it's a roll of the dice. The likelihood that you catch me, the likelihood that you go through the proper legal channels to get me into court to take care of this issue, that's what happened. That's what's basically what you're describing is that's what's happening over in the UK. And what is likely to happen here is that they're going to go, well, take me to court. Take me to court. Spend that money. And so if there isn't any kind of some form of like massive reform where you're getting into it, short of subcontractors banding together. What an exceptionally difficult problem to solve, because as you said, one of my questions was going to be, what are you hearing about this from general contractors? But it's quite clear that they're very hesitant to embark down your road because
Yep.
they're not in your shoes.
Yeah.
They don't care.
No. And that's one of the things I'm trying to figure out how to. So that's my, so the platforms exist, and I know they exist. Are they exactly what we need? I can't speak on that because I haven't used the platforms myself. But the conversations I've had, what I've seen of them, I do believe that it can sustain what we are looking at needing for this to work better for us. But the truth of the matter is, unless we have buy-in from every stakeholder in the chain of this, it's going to just be a battle until we can get everybody on the same page, and that has to be forced somehow. So, I am going to try to help support my goal is to help support the people who are really trying to push forward with the programs that can help us get there. My goal is to help continue to educate. I think that's where I'm kind of taking this too. I'm trying to get the industry to change and reform in this way, but I'm also going to use it to try to help educate subcontractors, support them, kind of be a voice for them, figure out how we can kind of band together a little bit and make this a little bit better together, right? But then I have to also then take it the legislation route of, well, how do we get this to be kind of a forced issue? And the one thing that I have to do, I think, to prove that this can work is I think I need to get like a test group. So I'm trying to find, and I don't know who I'm going to find, but I'm sure I'm going to keep talking until I can find a group of people who are willing to participate with me. But a couple, like a GC, a couple of subcontractors that utilize the platform for a period of time, have the experience of using it, use it as a research type of deal. Did this work? Did it make it better? How was it for the general contractor? How was it for the subcontractors? How was it for the vendors? Include the vendors in it too. Make it a whole thing so we can see if this is actually going to work or not. But that's what I'm looking for, because I think I need to be able to prove that there is a way to change it. You just have to prove it. What we're doing isn't just the way we do it anymore. We have to make it. We have to make change. We can't keep talking about it. We have to do something about it,
Right. First step is to talk about it and acknowledge it. But the second, to brainstorm, to begin this. So these programs, for whatever reason, I started thinking about the push to go to digital drawings. And from a transparency perspective, it's like, okay, this is nice because not that I want another electronic device to have to carry around the job site. Mm-hmm. However, if there's a change made to the drawings, they're automatically updated, and every sub on the job, their access to the drawings that they get are the updated versions right away. So it makes me wonder if there's a company that could come up with, let's say, we're a company that you can use us from a transparency perspective, that when the owner pays the GC, every sub knows right away, because you can clearly see it. Now you're going to have a lot of pushback on the general contractor for one reason or the other. But at least that's a start. And that's what it makes me think about, is that if we can do this with drawings and some other ancillary things, I don't see why, from a pay transparency perspective, it can't be done in that regard too.
You're so right on that, Rusty, because and it just hit me in what you're saying about this being almost like abusive, like spot on with that. Because for me to file a lien, at least in my state, to file a lien, I have to, at the start of the job, send a letter by certified mail to the owner that says, "Hi, I am Tara Cristel. I own Total Glass. I am performing on your project." If I do not send that piece of paper at the beginning of the project, I cannot file a lien, from what I understand. That's ludicrous. That's why don't they already know who the subs are? Why do I have to announce myself? Which I get it. I get it's their way of saying, well, it's your job to say so that the general contractor can't eliminate or leave anybody out. But if we're starting already from a level of distrust in this whole thing, it's complicated. It's too complicated already. It shouldn't be that way. From the start, it should be very clear who's on the job,
Right.
who's working on it. And if I need to put a lien on something, I should be able to do so and not just for a minor paperwork mishap. That part of it is wild. So when you think about that, if you can have drawings change just like that, there's
Yep.
no reason that information, we don't live in the dinosaur age anymore. We're not, information can change hands so fast.
Yep.
Money changes hands so fast in this country anymore, and internationally too. That's just the way we operate anymore. So there's no way that it should take that long for any of this to happen.
Right. There, 100%. And I get the fact of, okay, I'm the owner, right? So I don't want to have to deal with all the subs. I want one point of contact, right? And so, it depends on the it's the age old question. Okay, well, do I have a general contractor, or, do I have a construction manager that's my point of contact that converses with the, CM at risk? There's various different business models or whatever. But all these things came about because someone wanted to do something different than what was already instituted. So there's this concept, there's this, it's not a reluctance, there's this idea and this sound bite, this response that people do. Well, this is how it's always been done. Man, go kick rocks, because just because that's how it's been done doesn't mean it's how it's got to continue to be done. There are always ways we can improve. We just got done talking about the fact that so that I don't have, especially there are some large projects where it was in the Pacific Northwest that a guy was telling me about a job that they were doing, and it was a fairly large project. And he said almost every day there was some modification to the drawings, and the revision bubble is there to highlight that. But what happens if you've got 2 weeks ago drawings that you got 2 weeks ago? So, and I get that. And so if we're adopting technology that allows me to make real up to date, and if I'm a sub and I find a problem on the job site, right? I'm looking at the drawings and I'm going, well, the drawings that tell me that this shouldn't be here just because it's not sending my drawings, but I make a note, hey, this is what this is, and then all the other subs automatically know that this is what's taking place. Then to me, it just seems like what happens is, what's the pushback for? The transparency of the pay thing. It's because I have a vested interest in being a little bit nefarious and not telling you that I've gotten paid. That's what happens. That's the only. I would love to hear, let's say, the devil's advocate, if you will, and for somebody to explain to me in the context of our conversation why you would have a problem with being transparent and saying we've gotten paid by the owner. Mm-hmm. If you are above board and everything is good to go, tell me why you have a problem with being transparent and paying your subs on time. The idea that I can submit a pay application in October of 2025 and it is April 2026, there is nothing wrong with the work. There are multiple people who have signed off on X, Y, and Z, and I still cannot get paid is bananas to me. Bananas. And it shouldn't be that I'm financing this and that you've gotten the job done, and it's very likely that you've gotten paid. But if you haven't, as the GC, if you haven't gotten paid, and if states haven't outlawed pay if paid, they should. Because there are some states that have. Some states have gone out of their way to eliminate the pay if paid contract language, if you will, to say, no, you're not going to pay if paid. You need to pay when paid. But like you said, the real crux of it is when did you get paid? I'm not getting the answer.
Yeah.
You're just stonewalling me every chance I get because I've just financed your project. That's what they've done.
Yes. The answer is always next week. Maybe next week. Maybe next week. That's the answer I always get. Maybe next week. If I have to question it, we do have some general contractors who just pay, routinely, but still sometimes it's just long, it's a long draw, and it just should not be that way. It just shouldn't. And there has to be a better way. Even a simple email to every company who's working on the project to say that October's pay app has been approved and paid by the owner, the draw's gone out, would help tremendously to keep everybody honest from start to finish, or the general contractor submitted all of the pay apps. We'll look them over in the next 5 days. We'll let you know when everything's been approved. Your pay app wasn't approved. This is why your pay app was approved. You should be paid by this date. There is no reason that something so simple as that couldn't even happen. I mean, we could do a platform, which I love because it makes it easy, but really just that simple information communicated to everybody who owns a company on the project would be, I feel, the basic standard that should just exist already as it is.
Yeah. Have you had any interactions with owners?
No, I would love to, though. I would absolutely love to. I want to know what it's like for them. I actually am thinking about, Rusty, listen, I'm thinking about, this is so funny. I was just saying this today because I got to have a little fun with this, right? It can't all just be boring stuff. So I'm thinking about going undercover and undercover owner. I'm not really an owner, but I'll pretend like I'm an owner wanting to build something and just see what the process is like from start to finish when somebody approaches them about wanting to build something. What is required?
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it's also possible that you could have some, let's say, subpar owners.
Yeah.
That, but I can't, I can't believe that it's that many, that for the industry, the entire industry to, let's say, to have gravitated toward the way that we're doing business actively. I don't think there's that many poor owners for sure. Yeah. And certainly, I don't know. Wow. So let me ask you, have you had any difference between working on government as opposed to private?
No, it's all equal. The only government work that we've done was with a contractor who's very slow paying in general. So I feel like people will say that the government pays really slow, but this contractor just in general pays slow. So it didn't feel any different to me than what I already experienced with them. But I don't know if I would feel that way if it was a different GC that we did that work with. Was that with a state, locality, or federal government? It was in an Air Force base, so I would imagine. So it was federal government. Federal government. Okay. Yep. Okay. And that was even harder because I was trying to find out when they got paid, because it was we were going on retainage being held for a year and a half already, and it was one of our largest projects. So that's crazy. I think it was probably $50,000 that had been just sitting there for a year and a half, and so I started trying to just do my bill collection, efforts. And I started trying to reach out to the government. That's a nightmare. That was not worth my time. That was, you just wasted 2-3 days of your life, sister, because you're not going to get it back, and no one's going to email or call you. And no one ever emailed or called. And the only reason I found out, this is actually super funny. You want to know how I got that money released? Oh, I can't wait. The contractor on social media posted a picture of the ribbon cutting of the place 3 days after they told me that maybe next week they could release it. Maybe. They didn't really know. After weeks and weeks and weeks. And I literally emailed him and said, I saw your post on social media of the ribbon cutting. The building is being used. We need our money now. You are good. If it's just the ribbon cutting, everything's been approved, man. Everything. That is fun. And then you got paid, didn't you? Yep. Very next day, you can come pick up your check. So then there it is right there. Yeah.
there is proof in the pudding right there. There's where the rubber meets the road that is very abusive and nefarious in the whole scope of things. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And I bet you probably heard some horror stories out of the people that have reached out to you.
Yeah, it's and actually that talking to people since when I said what I said, it's actually funny because you're the one who told me that I needed to be on LinkedIn way back in 23, and the only reason I did it because you were very passionate about it, and I was like, well, he's very serious. But by the time I got back home, I put effort in making my stuff, but by the time I got back home, I was just whatever. But when I made my post that day, I didn't know why I was doing it. I don't know why I chose LinkedIn. I just was like, this has to be said, and I'm going to say it,
There you go.
And I said it, and then the outpour of people who have reached out, and then the mission became a little bit bigger at that point because hearing everybody's stories, I'm saying this because I know that my husband and I have put our blood, sweat, and tears in this company, and it is a crying shame that we are doing our best, but it's been this difficult for us. That should not be a thing. And, in the country where being a business owner is such a thing to be proud of and to work hard for, but it to be set up against you in something that is so needed in our country. This industry is so needed, and we just treat it like it's just so willy-nilly. And that blows my mind. It really does. I forgot what I was saying because I got a little passionate about that one because it does just get me all worked up. But the amount of people that have reached back out to me and told me their stories, and now it's like I feel pulled to do it because it affects hundreds of thousands of families who have worked really hard and put their hard-earned cash and time and their family's legacy into something for it just to be just like it's a joke almost, and I cannot support it anymore. I cannot get over it. We cannot be bullies to people who are really trying to do hard work out here to make our world a better place. We just can't. And are we trying to make a buck? Absolutely. We all are. That's how we live in this world,
That's right.
It's not that we're not getting something out of it, but it doesn't mean that because we want to go into business to be in commercial construction that we should have to have $1 million in the bank to be able to be successful at it. That's crazy. That should not exist. And the barrier for companies to get into this, it's just getting bigger and bigger, especially as things are getting more expensive, and how companies are going to be able to get into it. I honestly don't know. And the hustle can get you through for like 2-3 years, and then the hustle, you're tired and you just can't anymore,
Yeah. So the hustle thing brings up a really good point. How many of those people that reached out to you told you that was when we knew we were done?
Well, I'm finding that people don't realize it until it's just too late. Everything snowballs, and I'm seeing that too because, you never expect the problems to come, but when the problems come, they're big. But your money problems, if you're living in the traditional subcontracting world and you're just doing your waiting for money, hurry up, pay everything off, and wait for money, hurry, pay everything off, which is what so many people do. You don't realize how much trouble you're in until you just can't get out of it. And at that point, you either have to be able to pivot and say, oh, shoot, we're going to do this instead. That did not work for me, and we're going to completely change our model, or you're just too tired at that point. And I think a lot of people just get too tired. How many people have somebody who can actually pivot after they've hustled for years? And they're tired and they're exhausted and they don't exactly know all business. They know plumbing, they know HVAC, they know steel, they know glass. They know, they're just not business people, and that was the other thing was I'm going through all this banking stuff and everybody keeps telling me, well, maybe you need to hire like a fractional CFO, or you need to do this, or you need to do that. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is a lot just to prove to people that I'm making money, so it's an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, it's a struggle. And you want me to hire this professional and this professional and this professional. I can't even get paid for the work that I'm actively doing, right? Or I'm having difficulty getting my money back that I've earned. The job is done. I want the money that is has been contractually obligated to me. Where is that money at? So, point well taken there.
Yeah.
You know,
and a lot of people have told me that they felt like up until so I've talked to a lot of different companies. Some have failed, some had to really restructure and do better and grew. But my understanding from what people are saying is the hustle is real until you get to like about 5 million. And then when you get to about 5 to 10 million, they say, it just changes because people take you a little bit more seriously, so the banks aren't as difficult, which I find to be wild because you need more money. If you're doing $5 to $10 million, you need way more working capital than I need, but that's kind of what they said.
Just for clarification, you're talking about 5 to 10 million in revenue.
Yeah, revenue.
Or not in the bank, just 5 to 10 million a year in revenue.
Yep. In revenue, if you get up to that 5 to 10, they say that it gets a little bit easier. But when you're up into about the 5 million, they say that the hustle, especially between like the 2 and the 5, is pretty hard, they say, from what I'm understanding from everyone.
Yeah, that seems about right. We reside, so the company that I work for is, so I'm their safety manager. Well, I wear multiple hats. I'm a safety manager, been a construction manager for them, field superintendent for them, whatever happens to be needed, right? The other day I was out carbon arcing on a barge all day long, and I felt it the next day. I'll tell you what. But but when he first started, he was, probably in the 2 to 3 million. The following year, it was, 6 million. And 6 million revenue, and then it's, on the trajectory is probably going to be more than that this year. But I can only imagine like this, it's bananas that, I have to, the hustle. It's like a hazing experience almost.
Yep.
Right. You need to hustle and bustle. And it's like, why should I have to chase you down to get paid? Mm-hmm. Just give me the money that is contractually obligated to me. I worked for a company one time that they had done a job, and they didn't even have. They were an old company too. They didn't even have a contract. We started the job under a like an intent to give the award, right? Mm-hmm. So when the contract terms actually came to them, there was the retainage issue. And it was 2 different segments to the job. And so the owner was like, okay, the contract terms are good, but I'm not willing to sign off on the retainage on the first part because that's completely 100% done. That part of the retainage needs to come to us. The retainage on the latter half, okay. They couldn't come to terms on that. Mm-hmm. And he was like, okay, well, we're already having issues with job stuff anyway. I'll tell you what, I'll see you in court. And then we just pulled off. He pulled us all off. He was like, because we were like 95% done anyway. And he was pretty pissed because contracts matter. Contracts matter. And you're with the quick to threaten me by taking me to court because I'm not upholding my end of the contract, but you're not either because you're not giving me what's my due. And that's problematic. And so, short of like, it's almost like we almost have to have the entire industry focused on trying to make some form of systemic change that is also backed up by some form of legislation. Mm-hmm. So what type of legislation then are you either hearing other people propose, just in kind of general conversation, or do you think that, like, what would it look like to get this, to get things changed?
Yeah. So I feel, well, I think there has to be some consequences put into place if you make legislation, there has to be consequences put in place if you do not follow that. And it has to be big enough that it's going to hurt, because if not, why would we change? And like you said earlier, sometimes they'll put you through the court system and say, oh, we'll settle, and it's like, are you kidding me? No way. But at that point, you don't want to pay attorneys anymore. You don't want to go through it. You just need the money that you were there to work for. And you have to weigh, is that worth me paying even more money? Maybe settling is best, So I I think that there has to be some kind of consequence for sure. I think the platform is important because I personally think my biggest thing is I think transparency is an issue, and using a platform that puts everybody in the chain, every stakeholder's a part of it, everybody can see, the vendor can even see if it's the general contractor who's holding things up, you know?
Yeah.
It would be, everything would be there, all the pictures from the job site are on the platform, any lien waivers can be uploaded there. They said one of the things that they were, the company that I was talking to about their program, was that they've actually found that depending on how long things sit in the chain, they can predict who's having a problem and what the problem may be. So say that a subcontractor hasn't uploaded their lien waiver in X amount of days, because typically people move fast, they start to realize, oh no, there might be a problem. Let's call and find out what's going on. And instead of it becoming, oh shoot, the subcontractor has messed up, it becomes they own what's going on and they can work together more as a team to say, how can we remedy this situation, instead of just leaving it hang in purgatory, is pretty much what I feel like it always is when it comes down to subcontractors and contractors agreeing on things, you know? So that's where I think we need that's why I like the idea of the platforms, is just the transparency part of it. It would take that away, and that in itself would change so much for the industry, for sure. So I think the legislation's needed. And the other thing is like, you know, in the United States specifically, it's unique because every state has different rules. Every state has different retainage things. Every state, so it, you know, we're in a little bit of a different struggle than say like the UK is in pushing legislation. I'm sure that's why they're farther with pushing legislation, because they're just doing it in the UK. We have to do all state governments and get through all that, you know, and there are some states I believe that have done a little more work than Illinois. I live in Illinois, so we haven't really done too much, I don't think, to try to push this forward. I believe Colorado's been doing a little bit of work in the legislation world and trying to push some things. I'd have to look that back up again to see exactly. And I want to say Massachusetts had a big court case that they had just recently going on with something with retainage, and they were trying to change some stuff with retainage. I know a lot of people would like to push for no retainage in legislation, because why, you know, I think the idea is that when retainage was originally created, it was needed at that time, but it's become something it really wasn't meant for, I believe. And I think that our times have just changed so much. I think we could revamp that a little bit to make it more effective for everybody than just holding a chunk of money for a long time. You know, we can put other things into place, and we really just need to find a system that everybody can take. You know, we all have to take risk when we start a company. I'm not saying I shouldn't take any risk in this. I'm not saying the general contractor shouldn't, but it should be more evenly spread out amongst the team versus just dumped on one group of people. And that's what I do think happens here.
I think you're right. I also think that the subcontractors are what makes the thing go. You know, not to diminish, you know, everybody has a part to play, but, you know, when it comes to actually getting the work done, like physically getting the work done, it seems very strange to think about it this way, but the fact that I am financing your project and doing your project is a, you know, most people probably never even think about it. Honestly, the owners probably never even think about it. The generals know it. 100% the general contractors know it. But the idea that the ones who get the job done are also the ones who finance it is crazy. Yeah. It's crazy to me.
Yeah. Well, and you know, what's funny was, so this is just really, it's kind of off, but whenever I was going through this, when I started really thinking through this, because I thought about this on the deepest level that you can possibly think of it on, because I'm really trying to rationalize through, like, how does this make sense, you know? And I called my insurance agent one day and I was like, hey, and he's like, what's up? And I say, well, I need you to talk to me about this. Like, when we put our materials into a building, whose asset is it at that time? Right? So, like, who owns that asset when it's put into the building? He was like, well, as soon as you put it, you know, as long as you have it at your site, it's your responsibility. But as soon as you take it to the job site and you put it in, it is now their asset. And I was like, that's it right there. I am literally like, I gave my asset away. I have no other way to get my money back, because I just gave it to you, and you're saying I'm not going to give you money for it until, well, the retainage is over. So it's insane to me that that's just the way that it goes. I can't give you something for free while I wait forever for you to decide that you're going to pay me. And that's when I started to realize I am giving these people way too much power in my company by doing that. I'm just operating and saying, oh yeah, we'll go put that in with no payment. Yeah, we'll go do this with no payment. Yeah, sure, we'll get that done for you. And you can't keep doing that. So
yeah, predatory is probably a really good term also to use to describe how the system happens to be kind of, let's say, quasi-structured, because that's really what it is, right? I mean, until we can call us, and I'm not trying to throw like slurs, but until you call a spade for a spade, until you really like grasp the problem and go, that right there, this is what's going on. These are the parties that are a part of this. Just give me my money. Like that's bananas. So
I know
the various platforms that you've got going on, I'm really interested in seeing how they turn out. What can, let's say, be used, and I'm sure there's going to be various subs that are, hey, look, I'm definitely game to do it. But finding the general contractor and finding the owner to get on board and to utilize these programs is going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be interesting.
I agree, and I think the next few years in this industry are really going to say a lot. But I think I have good hopes and high hopes that it's going to change a lot for us. I really do think we're going in a good direction with it.
Yeah, I'm so eager actually to see the outcome of this, because I've got some podcast episodes scheduled, and I have been talking about the next 10 years are going to be very interesting in this industry. From a completely different reason, just from people to actually do the work, and for people that have the skill set to do it and everything of this nature, and recruitment and retention, and the ones who are in this game and are, have the number of years. The companies are going to, like the industry itself and companies within that industry, are going to heavily rely on these people. Quite frankly, my prediction is a lot of them are going to get burnt out and say, I'm done, because they're going to be leaned on so much. And so that's going to be a trying time. But then so the contractor then, and because of the conversation that you and I are having, the subcontractor is going to get it from both ends. They're going to have the difficulty of recruiting and retaining from, manpower to actually do the work and have the experience to be able to solve problems and deal with scheduling issues and all these, all of these things. But then they're also getting squeezed, because they're getting it from the general contractor who doesn't want to pay them any of their money. But then they're also getting it from the manpower as you're trying to recruit and retain and quite frankly, take care of the people who are boots on the ground doing the job, because they're becoming more rare. Mm-hmm. So I now have, one more thing out there in the peripheral to be looking for, to see how this, because unless you don't want to come back on here, this will not be your last time on here. I'm so interested in listening to the progress, and then like even like just, this is a specific example of what I run into, or these are like the top 5 examples of what we're running into, so that someone else starting their own business can be aware of the issues that they've run into. Or if enough people start like piling on and sharing it out, like, hey, this is a systemic problem. You never really know like where the information, and bringing it to light, pulling the veil back, if you will, and taking a look and going, this is this is the problem, and we need to highlight this and share and talk about it. And I mean, honestly, in the way that things change so rapidly, sometimes it just takes a testimony or two to go viral, a LinkedIn post to go viral, and it's hundreds of people who are reaching out to you, hundreds.
Yep.
So I'm so interested in where this thing, kind of turns out, because if you ask me, just based upon your own personal testimony from, the contractors that I'm aware of, converse with, talk with, do the work, and I have seen the terms. I've seen net 120. I've seen net 180. You're going to get a lot higher price for the projects that you do. But I'll say also that when I saw the net 120 and net 180, they promptly paid when everything was submitted. But still, I've seen it. So I know that these massively difficult terms exist contractually for contractors, and that makes this dynamic of what's going to take place. So I'm very, very interested in how, your progress, because you seem pretty tenacious. I think you're gonna be like, a hound dog on this, just focused, laser focused until, you see some changes. And so I'm excited about it. I really am.
Yep. And I see that you also talk a lot about, like you said, just the labor and new people coming into the field and how we're going to do that. And I have a lot of strong feelings and thoughts on that kind of stuff too. Obviously not the conversation for today, because that's a whole nother beast. But from my background of being a teacher and my master's degree is in instructional design, I see that from the top-down kind of perspective of what I see the issues to be at that, and why we're having such the struggles that we have. So that'd be a cool conversation to have with you sometime too.
Oh, I'd love to. I really enjoy talking, and I enjoy having conversations about things like this, because as I had a 5-week 7/12 shutdowns, and I took off 3 days. It was a Friday, so our schools are Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I said, you guys really ought to know how much I really enjoy teaching apprentices, because I missed out on 12 hours on Friday. I'm missing out on 12 hours of overtime on Saturday and 12 hours of double time here on Sunday to be here with you guys developing the next generation. So I love to have those conversations. And I it's funny because you're the second person who said that to me in 2 days about having thoughts. And you're the second person from the contractor side of the house that is interested in having that conversation about what it looks like from a contractor's perspective, to have, what does it look like to highlight, hey, there's some bad actors. Don't go to work for those bad actors. Come to work for these good contractors, and be invested in the success of us, because when we make money, you make money. Right? Symbiotic. So awesome. All right. So as a, let's say, final getting off of this platform for the day, just kind of recap who you are, and more specifically, the subcontractor project at the end.
Yes. So I am Tara Cristel, and I am the founder of the Subcontractor Project, which its whole mission is to reform the construction payment industry to make it so that subcontractors are paid in a net 30 on undisputed pay applications or any undisputed work, to make it a much more fair and honest arrangement for all parties involved in the construction payment process. So that's who I am. That's what I do. You can find me mostly on LinkedIn at this point. I'm trying to get some articles going on Substack. I'm working on a website, all the things, but this is so new. It takes a little time to get all that going. Yep. So LinkedIn is the best place to find me. You can search Tara Cristel or the Subcontractor Project. You can find all of my info there. Look up my stuff. And I'd love to hear from people. If anybody listens to this and they've got something to contribute, reach out to me. I'd love to talk to everybody. And that is my platform. My platform is, I want to bring everybody to the table. I want us all to sit down and have a conversation about it. And I mean that with my whole heart. I want it to be the contractors. I want it to be the subs. I want it to be the owners, the lenders. I want everyone to sit down and have an honest conversation about what this is and how can we make it better for everybody involved.
I am here for all of it. I love it. It's fantastic. We need more success stories, not, and sometimes those success stories also, there's a lot of people entrenched in the way things happen to run. And while they may not think it's perfect for them, or it's good enough for them. And so they don't want to see change. So I'm here rooting for the underdog,
Nice.
And I'm always, so as, kind of things progress, I'm definitely going to make sure we stay in touch. And if, somebody from Fair Build would like to have a conversation, or if you happen to be because I know what Tara's going to do. She's going to share this podcast out on LinkedIn when it gets published. And if you happen to be a contractor that is interested in telling your story, like perhaps there is a story that needs to be told, you don't have to name names, but maybe, hey, look, here's how I was exploited, or let's say, I ended up having to just completely walk away from this industry because I was, somebody just did not give me the time of the day, the money that I wish that, maybe this was 10, 15 years ago when things were just different. If you have a story to tell and you're willing to talk to me, then I am willing to talk to you, because an issue as important as this, right? I can't sit here and advocate for people to get in an industry when the contractors that we're going to go to work for aren't getting paid. They have to get paid, and they need to get paid in a very timely manner. If they're getting paid in a timely manner, if there's more transparency in this industry, then how much more work could they go and pursue? How much more work could they go and procure and get and achieve and finish and do? And so we're on an upward spiral as opposed to a downward spiral. Well, I cannot go after this work because I don't have the capital then to do the job until I get paid here. And just seems like it's a bunch of BS at the end of the day. So if you have a story to tell and you're willing to talk to someone, I'm willing to listen and put a podcast episode together, because I've been in this game for 25 years and I'm interested in hearing your perspective. And I'm always, the idea that we can never have change is ridiculous. That's the one thing that's constant, is change. So if I want to speak to that change and have a part to play in the change and the way things need to be changed, and more to Tara and the subcontractor project's point, the way we get paid needs to change.
That's right.
Tara, thank you so very much for taking the time out of your day, from chasing your money, if you will, to coming on here and having a conversation with me about what this looks like. The first of what I'm going to say, hopefully, are many conversations going forward about what this looks like, about how, we can look at, what we can think about and possibly kind of brainstorm when it comes to addressing this, quite frankly, this systemic national problem when it comes to pay. All right. Well,
thank you for having me. This was fantastic. I love the conversation too.
I had a great time. I really enjoy talking. It makes it, because a lot of the podcast episodes sometimes are just me talking to people, me just monologue. And monologues are fun. Don't get me wrong, but this brings a wider variety because, if you've had hundreds of people reach out to you, then this is a problem that definitely needs to be talked about. And I suspect that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be interested in hearing what you have to say. We could do many podcast episodes of okay, what are your actual proposals? What are getting down into details and all kinds of stuff. And other people probably there's all kinds of things that can come out from it. So I'm excited.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Do me a favor and stay on for just 1 second after I hit stop so that we can have it continue to upload and we'll be good to go. Thanks for listening, y'all. Appreciate it.